Hey everyone, welcome back to another video. Today I'm going to be doing my VCT Pacific player rankings. This will be my last player rankings video before we get into the pick'ems for every region. So really excited for that. I won't be doing a China player rankings videos as I've talked about before. Just I don't know enough about like all the teams in that region to kind of properly rank the players. So I would just end up talking about maybe like 10 guys out of the whole list when there's 12 teams worth of 5 players each, and it's just whole lot of different stuff there. But yeah, we're gonna go through every team, rank every player within their role, as well as IGLs and everything like that. So if you guys enjoy this video, make sure to leave a like and subscribe. Really helps me out. As well as go check out the other EMEA in Americas videos, and stay tuned for my kickoff pick'ems, as well as you can go check out my power rankings video that'll be on the end screen of this video. So if you just stay to the end, you can just click on that, or you can go to my channel and check that other one out, depending what you want to do. But regardless, let's get right into it. Oh wait, before we do that, I also do have to say my Twitter is in the description. You can go check that out. I will be updating these player rankings weekly on there. I'll also probably make update videos throughout the year, kind of showcasing how the rankings are moving around. So yeah, now let's get right into it. All right, and now as we always start out with, we have the Duelist players. Now, I forgot in my EMEA video to mention that these, like the colors here, symbolize the tiers of like where the players are. So like Texture, number one in a tier on his own, Buzz number two in a tier on his own, then Jing and Mei in a tier together as tier three. The players within the tiers can kind of be swapped around a little bit. I'm not like super uh, committed to like the order in every tier, but yeah, like I'm not gonna complain even if you have Jeremy number 8 and Patrick who's number 12. Like I'm not gonna freak out about that. But yeah, Texture, arguably one of the best players of last year, I think is pretty clearly the best duelist in Pacific. I have him in a tier on his own. Buzz, I think could definitely get there. Kind of being maybe more of a individual focused player on T1. I think some of the reason he is here is just because he's like that selfless entry duelist, which I do think is really good and really good for a team. It just maybe makes him look a little bit worse, and why he's not in the tier with Texture. But I also think he's pretty clearly just a little bit lower. The opping isn't quite there. Both these guys, I think, can play all three duelists. I think Buzz can play them better than Texture even. So I'm kind of talking myself into Buzz in the tier with Texture, but I think I'm going to leave him there just because I don't think he's that like take over a game style of player like Texture is. Then we have Jing, who definitely is that take over a game style player, except he's had some rougher games, especially last year. Like when he came back, it did look like he was a little bit rusty. Hopefully, he can get back to that like top two, top one spot that he was at before. Especially now playing maybe a new like I wouldn't say completely new role, but like I'd say relatively like new in terms of adding in some other Sentinel stuff, maybe some other flexible like flash initiators and stuff like that. We'll see. Then May, I have number 4. I think May is going to have a huge breakout year here. He is amazing. Uh, I don't know. I don't really have too much to say about May because I just think I've been really high on him since he came into tier 1 on DFM. I think he had a great year last year individually, and I think he'll have another great year, especially surrounded by more talent and being able to improve now in tier 1. Then this next tier, I have Dambi, Depp, and Primi. Dambi coming up from Ascension. He won it with Sinprissa, now on Nungshim. I think he is arguably the best Neon player in the world. I think, honestly, the two guys above and below him are also disgusting at that. But I think he is definitely the best. Hopefully, Neon isn't fully dead. I'm not exactly super, like, I don't really know if Neon's fully dead yet, but definitely I would prefer other duelists over her. So maybe Danby will be a little bit worse going into this year, just not being able to play his best agent. But I do still think he is good on Raze and Jet, just not quite to the level that his Neon is, where it's like arguably best in the world. I think he's good on the other two and should have really good mechanics still on those agents, and be a great piece for Nongshim. Then Depp, again, I say this every time I have to talk about Depp. He is so good, and I don't know. everybody just acts like he's not. I was being told that I should have Jeremy above him last year. Some other guys like Jemkin. Like it's crazy to not have Jemkin over Depp when I had Depp really in this like 4 to 5 range most of the year. Like I can try to pull it up. Hopefully I didn't tweet too much stuff. Um yeah, so to end last year, I had Depp number 6 with Texture, Jing, Buzz, May, and Jemkin above him, and Primy below, and Jeremy below. I just constantly like that was the number one thing with my player rankings was depth, 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 depth every week, and it was just it didn't make any sense to me. I thought he was playing fine uh, at the worst, but yeah, not his best year last year, but I think he'll bounce back with a better Zeta around him and be really good again. Then Primy, I think we go from one of my more underrated players, in my opinion, to one of my more overrated players, honestly. I don't think he's terrible by any means. And I mean, I think he has a lot of potential to be really, really good. I just think his raise is a little bit worse than where you'd want it to be. Like his raise and Neon are definitely his two worst duelists, besides Jet. Like out of the three main ones, I'd say. Um, he can flex around, play some Sentinel, play some Clove, that kind of stuff. But I think the narrative that he is absolutely deadlifting Talon is kind of just insane when you have a lot of other good talent on that team and Governor, I think, in Cruz and Jit Boys and Band. Like, I really like all of the other players on this team. I think they all have a lot of potential as well, which is why I think Talon as a team have a lot of potential. But I don't think any of them, even Primy, have really proven to be like that really great player quite yet. Now, Primy, I think a lot of that has to do with a lot of people like copying his style of like movement and peaking and stuff, which I do think is really good. I mean, I kind of use it myself when I play, but I don't think that necessarily makes him the best player. Uh, then Patrick, uh, I didn't really know much about him heading into this offseason. Like I hadn't heard anything about him, and then I watched like the global games, and I thought he was incredible in those games. I've heard some other stuff about him being maybe like a little less consistent and kind of a question mark on this team. But overall, I do have confidence that he'll be kind of the best player out of this pack here. Um, I also like Famous from Tier 2. He didn't look as good in that game that I watched. I watched Boom versus Global, and Famous didn't look as great in that game, but I am pretty familiar with him and I have a lot of confidence in him. Jemkin is a guy that I think has just been knocked down this list the more that I think about him because I do think he is a good player. I had higher expectations for him going into the year, and he hasn't quite met them yet. Maybe he will. Getting I just hope they put him on like full time duelist because I think that's what he is best at. But I don't think he's quite been that player that I think will take over a game or be really like one of the better players on your team to kind of push you over the edge kind of thing. I just don't. I don't know. I'm not super high on Jemkin anymore. As I am kind of with RRQ, I've just kind of like faded my excitement on that team and him a little bit. Then these bottom two, I think are definitely the closest. I'd like you could argue these two are in a tier below them, but I do think Jeremy has had some nice moments on Team Secret. We'll talk about him first because I do think this will probably be the one that people are the most upset about. The reason I have him here is I think the ceiling for the 4 guys ahead of him in this tier is just so much higher than he is. I don't think he is as mechanically talented, um, like even close as the other 3 or the other 4. And then in a lot of these big games for Talon, he really messes stuff up like a lot. He performs at such a low level. Maybe not such low. That makes him sound like awful, but like at a really low level that you really wouldn't expect for a player of his caliber. But I don't know. Like when you get into these games, like these big important games, I think yeah, it was the game that decided their year on Abyss when he's doing the updraft dash onto top mid on Abyss, and he doesn't buy his updraft and he just misses. That's on him. So I've waited for him to prove me wrong. Last year he didn't do it. I'm gonna make him do it again. I'm gonna put him at 12. I think in all likelihood he'll probably end up in the 10 to 11 range, maybe 9 to 11 range at the worst. Um, just because I think there's a floor there that the other guys don't have, but I don't know, man. Then Hyunmin, I just don't know a ton about him. I'm gonna leave him kind of at this spot. I don't really know fully what to think. I think he has good mechanics. He can play some nice stuff, but overall, I don't know. I don't know about Hyunmin, and that's pretty much my take right now. And now onto the Flashes role, which I think my number one's pick here is going to be a little bit of a hot take, but I do have Stacks as my number one. Last year, he was incredible, like by far the best Flashes player when he was playing on T1 specifically. Now, he will be IGLing now on T1, which I think will kind of drop his individual form a little bit. But so is Munchkin. So like I think it balances out between those two. I do think those are the top two regardless. Um, just Stacks, I mean the mechanics are just incredible. Hopefully like the dip on DRX from his mechanical skill was very obvious. So if you could get maybe like 80% of what he was on T1 last year, I do still think he'll be in this top tier, maybe like a top 3 of this tier if you get Envy up in there, or maybe something as well. But overall, I don't know. I think Stacks is incredible. Jesus. Okay. And so is Munchkin. I mean, everybody knows how good of a year Munchkin had last year. Just being probably a top 2 or 3 player on his team, that was one of the best teams, if not the best team in 2024. Yeah, he's just insane. And then Envy, I have number 3. I think he's kind of like the big underrated player in Pacific that like anybody who actually watches Pacific knows that he is sick. His supportive utility is great. His mechanics are really good. I don't think it's like quite on the level of like these top 6 guys. I think he'd probably be number 6 for me in terms of mechanics purely. But overall, I just think the util is better than everybody here. I think he's just amazing. The one thing that I do kind of wish is that he was maybe a little bit more flexible, but he did start building into that in 2024, so maybe he'll be even better in 2025. Then Something, everybody knows how good Something is. He's in this role just because he kind of plays more Initiator stuff than Jing. And I guess I mean, he plays less Duelist than Jing. Like, he really just plays the Jet for this team, and then he'll play. Now he's been playing some Sova, some Gecko last year. He played a bunch of different stuff, and I think overall, like he should be the flex player, and as the Flashes kind of player here, I don't know. Maybe he's not the Flashes player. I don't know where to put these Paper X players, so I'm just gonna keep them where they were last year, and then maybe shift the roles around after kickoff. We'll see with that. Then Akame, one of the best mechanical tier 2 players. The util and decision making isn't quite there, but I do think the just raw mechanics actually puts him over pretty much everybody else here. I think maybe Ivy. Actually, yeah, I'm gonna put Ivy over Bane. I don't know why I had it like that, but back to Akame. I mean, he can play the KO and the breach to a super high level. The rest of it is kind of eh. Like I don't even remember watching him play too much else other than Duelist. Let me. Oh, okay. Well, I don't have another tab open, so whatever. I don't know. I really like Akame. I really believe in him. I think he'll get into this like second tier here. I don't think he'll quite get into that like number 1 conversation because I don't really think DFM is going to be that good. But yeah, he's really really good, and I believe in him a lot. Again, I do want to see him maybe expand his agent pool a little bit into like Gecko, Fade, stuff like that. Maybe some of the stuff that Asuna plays, pretty much. Then CLZ, I've heard that he's going to be IGLing. I really thought it was XDLL, but feel free to correct me if I'm wrong on that. I do think I would believe more in XDLL because, as far as I know, CLZ was not IGLing in tier 2. So we'll see. But he's also just very mechanically good, specifically on the breach, I think is his best agent. Again, just not super flexible coming out of Japan. He plays the KO, the breach. I believe he played a little bit more stuff than Akame. Let me just pull it up on my phone real quick. This, this, CLZ. He played a little bit of Sova for them. But yeah, overall, I mean, he's played some smokes as well. CLZ has. Akame. Akame's played some Vise and some Yoru for DFM, as well as just a bunch of Duelists in the past, some Sova in the past. I haven't really seen him play the Sova, so I don't really have an opinion on that. But yeah, I've really only seen these two players play the KO and Breach mostly, but they are very good at them, and I think if you can develop them on other agents, that would be a really, really good one. And then Ivy, honestly, I don't know that much about Ivy. I do think he is good, but I haven't watched a ton of him, so I don't have a huge opinion. But I do know a lot of people like him, so I'm gonna trust their opinion. I don't think he's the IGL. Is he the IGL of SPG, or is that No, that's Francis. Okay, that's what I thought. But yeah, he's just a good support player. Same with Bane. I think maybe Bane has an argument to go. Like it would be Ivy in a tier, Bane in a tier, and then the rest of these four. But honestly, I'm just gonna keep Bane there for mainly for simplicity, but also just like I'm not exactly fully sure about Ivy necessarily. And then just a bunch of IGLs here, in order of like how pretty much how many good games they have. Like Shiro, well, I think has the most good games. I don't think he'll like take over at all. Cruz, I do think has that capability of maybe winning you a map or two. But I think he has some more of those like 5 and 15 games than Shiro will. Same with Estrella. I mean, I don't think he'll win you maps, but he'll have some decent games here and there, but also have those 5 and 15 games. And then Kelly S, I don't know too much about as an individual overall, but I'm assuming isn't incredible because I haven't heard that specifically about him. Now onto like my scan initiator rankings. I have Forsaken classified as the scan initiator. If I had him in literally any role besides Duelist, I would have him in a tier of his own at the top. Maybe if I had him in Sentinel, I'd have him like in a tier with Meteor, but still number one. He's incredible. Everybody knows how good Forsaken is. He can play pretty much every agent in the game to a high level. And yeah, he's just great. Then Crystal, who I think most people would categorize as a rookie. He played in Chinese tier 2 last year. He played in Pacific tier 2 the year before. Um, he's just an incredible initiator player, has been IGLing for a lot of teams in the past, but now is not. He was an incredible individual while IGLing and seemingly is even better while not. So I'm a big fan of Crystal. And I think he'll be incredible this year. Even if GE isn't even that good, I still think he'll be great. Then Governor. I really like Governor as a player overall. Now, as a scan initiator player, I do think he has some room to grow. But the reason I have him in this tier over maybe your Kushes or your Izus or your XDLLs, maybe players that I really like, is strictly because I do like him as a player and I believe in him. I think he will end up being a like really good scan initiator player, and I do think he is a good one right now. But maybe this is a little bit of a projection having him at number 3. Then I have Kush at number 4. I think he's shown some great stuff during the offseason. If I was just rating the offseason, or is it Cushy? It's Cushy? Oh, okay. I just looked them up on VLR. Okay, well that's helpful. Yeah, Cushy, I mean, he was great during the offseason. If I was just rating him based on that, he would probably be in the next tier up. But he is a rookie. I will rate him a little bit lower just because of that. But yeah, he's really good. He honestly, stylistically, is like your EUs, where they're just like that really, really good trading player, I guess, if that makes sense. And very good mechanically. You just got to see him kind of perform at that high level throughout the regular season and just on stage in VCT. Yeoman, he's been great for a couple tier 2 teams. Another player that was an IGL but is now coming in playing scan initiator for a team and playing at a pretty high level. Now, the mechanics, I mean, for Gen G, like comparatively to Lakia, I do think the mechanics are better. And I think he's better as an individual player. The util is a little bit worse, but I do still think it's like towards the top of Pacific with that. Like his Sova's really good. I haven't really watched him play too much else, honestly. For I guess I did watch him play Fade for Gen G. But yeah, overall, I just think he's a sick player. I don't think he'll go too much higher than this. Like, I think he'll probably peak at maybe like the second tier and like being maybe like a like 4 to 5 range, like if this tier gets a little bit bigger. Um, just because I don't think the mechanics are super good and I don't think he's really going to dominate. I don't want to say statistically because I'm not a big stats guy, but just overall, I don't think he'll like dominate games necessarily for Gen G, so I don't think he has too much room to go up, but he'll still be very good. Izu, I think, has a lot of potential on the scan initiator role. He was getting thrown around on a bunch of random roles last year. You could even argue that he's like a flashes player because he plays a lot of Gecko and Yoru. But he was playing like smokes for a while for this team, and I don't think he was terrible on smokes, but he definitely wasn't great. And then he was getting thrown on Duelist as well, which I don't know. Like he used to play a lot of Duelist back in tier 2, but I really thought he was a player that would get picked up and transition to something else, which is kind of what happened. And he wasn't super great when playing the Duelist. So now getting to play maybe this role that does fit him a little bit more. Hopefully he'll get to play some Sky and stuff because when he has played that very sparingly for T1, I do think he's looked really good overall. But yeah, I don't know. I like Izu as a player, but with what we saw last year, I can't rate him super high. Then XDLL, a great rookie coming in here from Japan. I feel like he should have been one of the more hyped up players coming in, but I guess he really wasn't. I guess yeah. Maybe CLZ is IGLing because he played ISO. I didn't even see this. He played ISO in the Riot Games Invitational. Huh. So actually, if he's not IGLing, I am gonna move him at least up above Izu. Actually, you know what? Fuck it. Fuck it, we ball. I am moving XDLL into the number 4 spot because he's not IGLing. I think individually he'll look sick. I mean, he has looked sick as well, like in these games. He was sick in tier 2. As far as I know, he was the IGL of Fennel. Because he had that like little star. I believe it was on Liquipedia as well that he was the IGL. So I just assumed that was the case. And yeah, I mean, mechanically, he's really good. Utility usage, he's really good. I would assume since he was the IGL, his comms are really good. I'm considering moving him up a tier even, but I am going to leave him here just to not change a ton. Then, yeah, we need to talk about Francis. IGL for, I almost said SPG. Francis. There we go. For Nongshim, the IGL, I think he's a really good individual, but maybe the consistency won't be there, especially in tier 1. I do think you could really argue that he's the tier below, but I do think he is a very good individual player for an IGL at least. Then Freeing, I think, could be higher as well. I'm not super familiar. DRX? Did I spell his name wrong? Oh, it's a 1. Okay. I'll put the 1 in. Fuck it. He has been IGLing as far as I know and playing Initiator, which I'm not super familiar with. I don't think he'll look incredible individually, but from what I've seen and what I've heard, he has looked pretty good as an IGL, so that's at least a good sign. Then Jesse Vash, I think, has some games where he is pretty good, but overall, just isn't a super impactful player. I do think his utility usage, specifically on Sova, is pretty good, but other than that, I'm not exactly sure about him. I'm actually going to move him down a tier now that I heard that. NC Slasher is fine, and then Art. Yeah, he uses the Odin and the Judge and is funny, but like individually, he's not that great. All right, now going on to my smokes rankings. Number 1, Charon. Number 2, Mako. Now that Mako's not IGLing, I do think this is a little bit more muddy in terms of the conversation between the two. Like, I do think Charon was pretty clearly one, but Mako does kind of have his games and is still that elite level smokes player right next to Charon. But now that Mako's not IGLing, I do think he will be a little bit more consistent and have more great games. And maybe Charon, if he plays like he did down the line at Champs, maybe we could have like a conversation of Mako being in a tier of his own at the top. But overall, I do think Charon, in terms of last year, had quite the better year than Mako. Um, Honestly, I've talked myself into it. I don't like doing it based off of just one year. We're going to put Mako number 1 now that he presumably will not be IGLing for DRX, and Charon, yeah, has had some performances as of late. I do think the peaks are better for Charon, but Mako's consistency over the last however many years he's been playing is just unparalleled. Then Monyet has been really good in Pacific for a couple years now. When he played the smokes for Paper Rex, like when he wasn't on Raze, I always thought he was incredible anyways. And then he's been really good for RRQ for a while. So on top of being absurdly good for global esports the year before. Then number 4, we have Persia, who honestly, it's really hard to not put him higher. I do think he will be in the contention for the best smokes player in Pacific this year, but he is a rookie, so I am going to have him number 4. I mean, he is so good. He reminds me stylistically a lot of Mako. His Brimstone is incredible. His other agents I do think are a little bit worse, but he's still very, very good at them. But yeah, it's just like his Brimstone is by far his best agent, despite his other agents being on the level of some of these other top smokes players as well. Then Mindfreak, who I actually originally had below Sugar Zero, but I do think these two guys are two pretty solid smokes players most of the time. Mindfreak will have some really bad games, especially when you get into those international events. He'll sometimes have some insane tournaments as well, where he is really, really good, like Champs and what was it? Uh, Copenhagen, where Paper X made both of the finals. If he has performances like that, the team will be really good. But last year, his international performances, especially at Shanghai, were awful. Like, he was so bad at those events. Hopefully, he'll be a little bit better this year. I think you'd have some regression to the mean with him. And yeah, I just think he'll be good. And then Sugar Zero, with Astra being a little bit more in the meta, I do think Zeta should be kind of leaning into that with him, where Sugar might actually be the best Astra in the world still. I do think there's some other guys here that are in the conversation with that. But yeah, he's another really solid smokes player. I don't really think too much else of him. Then this next like group of 3, I think is 3 players that definitely have potential. Jit Boys has had some really nice games for Talon, but hasn't been super consistent in my opinion. Kind of an underrated player in my opinion. Not a lot of people talk about him as really like good as like a good smokes player, but I mean I think he is. I think he's been honestly like a sneaky top 3 player on Talon over the past couple of years when he's been on that team. I really like him. DOS9 was really good in what the fuck is the I don't know what the tier 2 region is called, but it's the one that uh India plays in. But he's really, really good. I mean, he was really good in tier 2. I don't think he was quite as good playing for Boom in the offseason event that they played, but I do still think he'll be very good. Poppy did impress me in the games that I've watched. I haven't watched a ton of him, but I do think he is good. A lot of people have said he's good, so I'm going to put him number 9 as for right now. Then Sylvan, I really didn't think he was that great when he was on Gen G, honestly. I don't get where this uh like narrative that he was really good on Gen G in 2023 came from, but I'm open to the idea that he'll be good. Um at least good enough for T1 to like go to international events and be good there. But I'm not necessarily predicting that Sylvan will be the reason for that or he'll even help them do it that much. I think he'll kind of just be there. 2GE is kind of just bleh all the time. Like his peaks are not that great and his lows are pretty low. And then Gan, I just don't know anything about this guy, man. Like he hasn't played that. I mean, he has played a little bit in the offseason just because DFM has played a lot of games. But like when you put him on these Omen maps and he's playing that for the team, he and the entire team just don't look that great. When he's played the Clove, the team itself does actually look good. Um, except for an Ascent. Ascent he did actually, or not he did, but the team did look good. So I don't know. The flexibility isn't quite there, and I just don't know enough about him. And when he has played, he hasn't looked that great. So I don't know. I don't have a ton of expectations for Gian, but he could be really good, maybe. And now my Sentinel rankings. Number 1, Meteor in a tier of his own was incredible last year. I think he'll be very good this year. I think separated from that Gen G system, maybe he'll be a little bit worse, but I do think T1 themselves will be very good, so I don't really have too many doubts about him. Then Flashback, not having to play the scan initiator stuff that he's not quite as good at, I think is a very, very big thing for him. And he'll be probably one of the better Sentinel players in Pacific, just like he was last year. Devi, I have classified as a Sentinel player. He'll be really good. I do think he is a little bit overrated. He is that kind of rock, that guy that doesn't make as bad of decisions on paper X. But mechanically, he's not like the best player in the world, obviously. But I do still think he's really good. He's been getting more flexible, playing that Sova and that kind of stuff. Like, honestly, I would prefer him to play the scan initiator stuff. Maybe Forsaken play the Sentinel, or something like that. Maybe Forsaken to play like flashes, or I don't know. I'd have to actually look all the way through it, but like I'd prefer him to play some kind of initiator role rather than Sentinel role, just because I did not mean to do that. I clicked the wrong thing. Just because the mechanics aren't there, and I wouldn't fully trust him to maybe like go take a 50-50 duel and win it like most of the time against like some of the better Sentinel players or better Duelist players in Pacific. Then Zephyro, I think he's been an elite site anchor for RRQ these past couple of years. Not couple of years. When he's played the Sentinel last year for RRQ, he was incredible at it. I think he'll continue to be incredible at it. Be this kind of rock on that team. Specifically on the defensive side, I think his lurking could get a little bit better when going on the attack, but I still think he's really good. Jinbong, one of my favorite rookies. Overall, I think just for DFM, he'll be very, very good. He has been in the offseason already. I think he'll probably get into this top tier at the very least, if not even better. If you can't tell, I do really, really, really like this DFM roster, specifically with Mei, Akame, and Jinbong. I talked about it in my power rankings, but I think those are 3 really, really good young players. Then Ban, I think, has been pretty good on Sentinel. I don't really have any huge takes on Ban. Okay, I searched him on VLR, and it's just like took like a million years. But yeah, he's played a lot of different stuff in Tier 1. Like last year for T1, I believe he was playing. What the fuck was he playing? He was like the 6th man coming in playing random stuff until international events, I believe. Like at Tokyo, he was playing, yeah, like Smokes and Jet mostly. That was weird. For Talon, he's played multiple different things. He played some Initiator. What else did he play? He's played a little bit of Chamber. Ban. He's played Sentinel. I thought he played something else as well, but maybe not. He's played some more Initiator for uh Talon. He's just kind of been back and forth through a bunch of different roles. But I do think if he is set on the Sentinel role, I do think he will be pretty good. Then Foxy 9. I believe in Foxy 9, but he has not shown a lot specifically in this offseason. I think he has been honestly kind of bad filling in on the Sentinel role for Genji. I do think kind of stylistically and like the archetype of player, I do think it was good process to pick him up in place of Meteor. But he has to get better if this team is going to be really good. He can play both Sentinels, the Yoru, and the Gecko, which is really what he needs to play for this team. But again, I do still think he has to get better on all of the roles. Sentinel was the stuff that he looked the best at for DRX last year, so maybe he'll be better. But I'm I'm almost out on Foxy 9. It's like just on the edge. I do think he's really good mechanically, but everything else with him just isn't quite there yet. Then Udotan has looked really good in the offseason events, and I watched some games of him in China last year. Looked really good in both. Really believe in him for global. Wild Oreo looked really good last year for Team Secret. I think he'll continue to look good. Margaret was really good for what was it? SPG, now Nongshim. I think he'll be really good. Fyota was, I mean, apparently one of the most hyped up players in Japan. I thought he was good in Japan last year, and I think he'll be really good on Sentinel. Um, and has kind of shown a little bit in the offseason, not a ton. He's definitely shown flashes. Oh my god. Dude, I just looked at his stats. I was just pulling up his VLR just to make sure there wasn't anything I missed about him. He had a .06 rating against Fnatic on Killjoy, which is not great, and not kind of proving my point at all. But I do think he'll be very good for this Zeta team. And then Berserk's, I don't think he's bad. I just don't think he kind of stacks up with the rest of the Sentinel players in Pacific, who are all either have a high potential or very, very good. All right, now moving on to the IGL list, my last list here. We got Munchkin, number one, pretty clearly. I don't think it's even close between anyone else and him. You could argue there's a pretty big tier gap between him and the next guy. But I do think Stacks is a pretty solid IGL, specifically when he's in Pacific, like in the regional games. I do think he is very, very good. When he gets to those super high pressure international games is where he kind of falters a little bit. Paper X, I do think the mid rounding is a little bit worse, and it kind of has the same issue as Stacks. So I don't really have one set IGL for that team. I just kind of write Paper X down because they're kind of just a hive mind kind of thing. And I'll have them number 3 again in a tier of their own. Then Jesse Vast, Estrella, Cruz, all like IGLs that don't really affect the game too much, in my opinion. Like, they're not guys that will win you games, but they're not guys that will be so bad that they'll lose you games, kind of thing. Or if they do lose you a game, then they'll win you a game later, kind of thing. I kind of feel very similarly about the 3 of them. Then Freeing and Francis, 2 new guys on the block that I do believe in, but I need to see it first with them. Like, I think they would be in this tier, maybe the low end of it, as for right now, but I just need to see it first. And then Art, Shiro, CLZ, and Kelly S are either guys that I don't know much about or the ones that I have watched and haven't been super impressed with the calling with. Namely Kelly S and Shiro. That Boom and global game wasn't very great to watch in terms of the calling and like the mid rounding and working the map. So I don't know. I feel like I kind of sped through that, but a lot of this is pretty self-explanatory. Maybe some people won't like the ordering within the tiers, but I do think the tiers are pretty correct as to most people or as to what most people would think. But overall, let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Let me actually copy the actual list. So yeah, these are my rankings. You got this for my Duelist. I'm not going to read it out again. But yeah, these will be my rankings for Pacific. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Go follow me on Twitter, subscribe, like, everything like that. And I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.